Miami has a bit of a reputation. It's known as the party port, which means high energy, lots of drinking going on, and yeah, you're probably gonna see drug sniffing dogs at embarkation. But don't worry, while facts, it is a little bit of a party port, that's true, it is still totally family friendly. But the vibe here is a little different than you'll find at other ports, in a good way, and I'll tell you why. I'll also share with you my secret to how you can enjoy a bougie Miami beach day at a fancy resort on a budget. Plus, I'll show you why flying into a different airport instead of Miami could save you hundreds, even with a little bit of a drive south. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. So let's talk the Miami cruise port. Port Miami is massive. It's absolutely huge. It covers more than 500 acres and welcomes millions of passengers each year. It often jockeys for the title of the world's busiest cruise port with Port Canaveral, which is outside of Orlando. But either way, this is a heavyweight champ. Now, terminals are labeled A through G, plus there's J, and there's Terminal V, which is used by Virgin Voyages. And no, that's not a typo. Letters are skipped, which does confuse sometimes first-time cruisers. Now, don't bother trying to memorize the map or get tied up in terminal locations, though, because the port has excellent signage. And when you arrive there, either on your own if you're driving, or if you have transportation or an Uber, you'll be directed to your terminal based on your ship. And like airports, they'll have big digital boards up, and they'll tell you which cruise ship in which cruise line is docked at which terminal. So if you do want to know in advance, you can check your e-boarding pass or cruise documents to find the location. Now, fun fact about Port Miami, the port sits on Dodge Island, which was actually built from 3 smaller islands back in the 1950s. I love little nerdy facts like this. And it's one of the few cruise ports that sits right next to a major downtown. I'm talking right next door to it. There is a little bit of a tunnel you have to go through and get there, but it is a little island, but it's close to downtown. Now, if you are lucky enough to sail away from Port Miami at night, which happens often on Virgin Voyages cruise, I've done that before, it's amazing. Those skyline views with the dark sky and the city lights are unreal. Now let's talk a little bit about Port Miami's party port reputation. It is a little bit true. You will see the high energy, you'll see people drinking a little bit more, you'll see more bachelorette parties, and almost every cruise I've taken out of Port Miami, regardless on the cruise line, I have encountered drug sniffing dogs. 100% of the time when I've cruised Port Miami with Carnival, I have encountered drug sniffing dogs. Still, totally family friendly. Cruises out of Miami are totally fine. I actually like the upbeat energy. I'm not a drinker myself, but I just like the excitement, that embarkation day excitement that you get out of cruises from Miami that you don't necessarily find out of other cruise ports. Now, the biggest wild card comes to getting to the Miami cruise port. I will tell you, Miami traffic, it sucks. People in Miami drive like lunatics, and I'm a very aggressive driver myself, and it's not far from the airport. MIA airport is just about 8 miles away, but still, depending on the time of day, that could be a 20-minute ride, easy peasy, or it could be an hour of watching brake lights and people drive like maniacs. So that drive can be easy or it can be tedious depending upon a number of factors. Now, another option that I love to consider, and I do this every single time I cruise out of Miami, I also do it when I cruise out of Fort Lauderdale, which is Port Everglades, is I always check flights to and from both MIA, which is Miami International Airport, and Fort Lauderdale, which is FLL Airport, because the two just sit about 26 miles away. I do this all the time because flights are often cheaper into one or the other, or the times of the flight are substantially better. For example, after my cruise, I'm ready to get home. So if I can find a flight direct home out of Fort Lauderdale that gets me there in 2 hours direct, and it leaves around the noon spot, which is usually the sweet spot when you're trying to book a flight home after a cruise, I would far prefer to make the trek to Fort Lauderdale to fly much sooner home than waiting until like 9 or 10 o'clock if that's the only available direct flight out of the Miami airport, for example. So by looking at both airports, you can open up a lot more airline options and not only potentially save a lot of money, especially if you're traveling with a group, but you also can get much more convenient options potentially with one out of the other. My other little hack is nowadays round-trip domestic flights in the United States are rarely bundled into cheaper prices. I almost always book 2 separate legs. And in fact, my next cruise, which I had out for in 2 days, I'm flying into Fort Lauderdale, heading out to Miami, but then I'm flying home from Miami. So you're not bound, you're not required to book a round-trip flight in and out of the same airport. You can book one-way legs both ways, to and from home from your cruise, and that can be a lot better too in terms of saving money. Now, in a real pinch, I did a family cruise recently this summer. We had 13 of us, and our flight into Fort Lauderdale got canceled out of the blue. Thanks, Allegiant, never again. And there were no other good options, and all the other prices were jacked up. So it actually ended up being a lot cheaper for us to fly into Orlando, which is MCO Airport, and make the 3-ish hour drive down to southern Florida. So make sure you consider all the different airport options if you want to take a cruise out of Port Miami, and the flight options to and from just are not working out when you're looking just at MIA Airport. Now let's talk about your best transportation options when it comes to getting to Port Miami, because some of them seem smart until you realize they're not. Now, if you are heading with a group, I always recommend private transfer because you can get transfer service for a group of people, and when you break down the per person cost, it's substantially cheaper. Now, full caveat, I've never used Get Transfer. I have my own preferred option I'll tell you about in a moment. And when I look at reviews for Get Transfer, reviews are mixed. So do your homework and know that if you are balling on a budget, totally respectable, that's what I do, and you opt for Get Transfer for your group, it may be hit or miss. Now, the most reliable option in most cases to get to Port Miami is a cruise line transfer. They're convenient, they feel safe, you book them directly through the cruise line, they have all these guarantees, but in my opinion, they are very overpriced unless you are a solo traveler. Carnival, for example, charges about $24 per person to get you from Miami International Airport to Port Miami. And remember, they're not very far away. So if you have even a family of 4, you're paying nearly $100 just to get from the airport to the port. And you're on a big bus with a lot of people. You have to work on their timelines. You have to wait for the bus to fill. Just take an Uber. It's actually going to be cheaper for you. So cruise line transfers, they have their place. If you're a first-time cruiser and you get the hives thinking about taking an Uber in Miami, maybe you've never been, by all means do that. Or if you're a solo traveler, cruise line transfer can be a great option as well. But for everybody else, I think cruise line transfers are not the move. Now, a great way to go about getting transportation to Port Miami is simple rideshare. Uber and Lyft are great go-to options. And the price on average, of course, it can fluctuate based on a number of things and surge pricing. But on average, to get from the Miami International Airport to Port Miami, it'll cost you about $15 to $30, which is expensive if you're a solo traveler. But if you have a group of 3 or 4 people, or even if you book an Uber XL, if you have 5 or 6 people, it's significantly cheaper than using the cruise line transfer service. Now I'm going to share with you my secret weapon. I like Uber. In the past, that was always my go-to. But one time in Miami, I took an Uber and he was fantastic. And come to find out, he doesn't just drive Uber, but he has his own black car service, and his name is Hector. So now my preferred recommended way of getting around in Port Miami, if you're taking a cruise out of there, is to book a private driver. Book my man, Hector. I've used him now many, many times. I've referred hundreds of people to him. He's been able to grow his business. He actually just bought a Mercedes Sprinter SUV, brand new, so he can accommodate big groups. When I sailed this summer with my big family group, he accommodated us, and we all fit in the van, and it was nice and luxurious. He's on time, he's professional, it's bougie. When he picks you up at the airport, he's got his little iPad with your name on it. You can schedule him. It's a nice luxury, but not at a luxury cost. Now, he can pick you up from the airport, take you to Port Miami, and if you fly into Fort Lauderdale Airport, he'll even pick you up and take you over to Port Miami and vice versa. And if you fly in super early, your embarkation time isn't, say, until 2:30 p.m., he can even take you on a tour of Miami. Or if your return flight home is late, he can take you on a Miami City tour. He does all of these things. He's very flexible. And surprisingly, he's not that much more expensive than a black car Uber service or an Uber XL, and he's worth every penny. I'll drop his information below if you want pricing and information. Highly recommend. Everyone loves this guy. Now, another option to get to Port Miami is hotel shuttles. And this is one thing where cruisers lose their damn minds. I see every day people asking on cruise forums, what's a great hotel in Miami that has a shuttle to Port Miami? People, get over the hotel shuttles. They're few and far between. There are some rare exceptions, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But most of the Miami hotels, if they offer a shuttle, they're going to charge you for it. And the cost is not cheap. It's usually the most expensive, unless you're a solo traveler, compared to all of the other options. So get out of your head the hotel shuttle opportunities, except for this one exception where it is included at no cost. I'll tell you about in a minute. That is the only time I would ever recommend using a hotel shuttle. Now, another option, if you really like to ball on a budget, is Brightline and Tri-Rail trains. Brightline is Florida's new high-speed train. It's pretty awesome. It connects Orlando, West Palm, Boca, Miami. It'll drop you off at Miami Central, which is just a short Uber ride to the port. It's fast, it's comfortable, not as cheap as you might think, but still a good budget option in general compared to most other options, and includes Wi-Fi and snacks. Now, if you are trying to save on flights, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the move is to fly into Orlando and you can take the Brightline down south. It's about a 3.5-hour Brightline ride, way more relaxing than renting a car and driving. So that is another way to consider. It's slower, but it's budget friendly, and it's a nice commuter option if you're comfortable with that mode of transportation. All right, now I'm gonna share with you my secret of the one hotel I've ever found that provides a free shuttle to Port Miami, and we're going to talk about where to stay before your cruise. Now, flying in the night before your cruise, highly recommended. Don't fly in same day. You're going to play silly games, you're going to win silly prizes. It might work out for you some of the time, but missing a cruise is not worth flying in the same day. Just don't do it. So if you're flying in the night before, highly recommended. If you're flying, that is. Some people have the luxury of driving. Let me tell you the best hotel options in Miami that are budget options. But then I'll also tell you, for you bougie people that like beachfront options, I'll give you those top choices as well. Now, I've stayed in many of these. I have not stayed in them all, but I've done a lot of research looking at cruise forums and polling the cruising community, and these are all highly rated. The first value option, and by the way, value is relative in Miami. Miami's just expensive, period, so don't get sticker shock. But my first value choice and recommendation is Hampton Inn Miami Airport East. Solid choice. They have a free airport shuttle, so if you're flying into MIA Airport, you can take their shuttle there at no cost. They offer free hot breakfast, which is great if you have a family and you're trying to save because food is expensive, especially in Miami. And they do offer a cruise port shuttle. It does run at certain times, 10:15, 11:15, 12:15. But the kicker, it's $12 a person. So if you have a family of 4, why would you pay $48 for a timed shuttle where you gotta sit and wait and be with a group? Just book an Uber, for goodness sake. But otherwise, a really great value choice if you're trying to save money. Another great option, this is probably, I would say, the top rated one amongst cruisers that are looking for a value option, is Hampton Inn Blue Lagoon. They offer a shuttle to Port Miami. Again, it's not free. $14 a person, so even more expensive. And they also have 3 set time pickups. Now, they do also offer a park and sail package. So if you are a cruiser that is driving in, this package includes parking for 7 days. And then they do include, baked into that price, shuttle for 2 people to Port Miami. So depending on the rate, this could be a cheaper option than paying for a shuttle to the port, or paying for parking at the port, or paying for off-site parking. So you have to weigh the cost. And sometimes with these park and sail packages, they jack up the room cost significantly. So make sure you're doing your math to get an apples to apples comparison before you book. Now, the secret, the one value hotel that offers a free shuttle, and this is rare these days, is Comfort Suites Miami Airport North. It's one of the only hotels that offers that free shuttle to the cruise port. Plus they throw in breakfast, they have Wi-Fi, and they have an airport shuttle. So conceivably, if you're flying into MIA Airport, you're not gonna spend any money on transportation at all. They'll pick you up, take you to the hotel, you have free breakfast, and they'll shuttle you to the port the next day at no cost. And by the way, quick side note, I actually call every single one of these hotels to make sure the information is correct, but things change all the time. So if something is now out of date, let me know in the comments, and I'm sorry about that, but I do the best I can. Now, if you prefer something a little bit more upscale, the DoubleTree by Hilton Miami near the airport is great if you like to shop. I've stayed here a couple of times. I like it because I don't like to do a ton of things before a cruise, but I also don't want to sit around in a hotel all day. And this one is walking distance to the Miami International Mall. It's like they almost share parking lots. Super nice, close walk, flat ground, easy peasy. And they even offer a shuttle if you don't want to walk, but although it's an easy walk, assuming you don't have mobility issues, but they have a free shuttle that'll take you to a lot of spots that are within a 5-mile radius. So that is a great option as well. Now, heads up, a place that I do not recommend, I've fallen prey to this. I'm a big fan of traveling on credit card points. I'm a big fan of the Capital One Venture X card. I'll drop my link below. I have gone all in on that, but I do still have a Hyatt card from olden days that has points on it. And so I have a couple of times booked this hotel because I had the points and it was free, and I have lived to regret it. And that is the Hyatt Place Miami Airport. Not a fan. It's nice and close to the airport, but the hotel is very dated. It smells weird. The staff is rude. And the biggest issue, there is nothing at all that you can walk to eat. And there are very limited food options on site. And what they do have are very expensive. So I do not recommend that one. Go with one of the other 4 options instead. Now let's talk about the more expensive options. This is for those that want to turn their cruise into a longer vacation, either having a beachfront hotel experience before or after their cruise. There are a ton of hotels in Miami and in Miami Beach. A lot of them are very expensive. I'm going to give you my top picks. First is Andaz Miami Beach. I love this one. It used to be called The Confidant, but they rebranded recently. But it's very chic, it's very retro. They have beach access, they have a rooftop pool. It's more boutique but resort, but that's the vibe. And it's right there across the walkway to Miami Beach, super, super close. Now, right across from Andaz is another favorite. You do have to cross the street to get to the beach, but it's a short, easy walk, and it's called Circa 39. So it's not directly on the sand, but it's literally steps away. And what I like about Circa 39 is they include use of beach chairs and umbrellas, and they'll even give you towels to take with you and not have to deal with that Now their pool is smaller, but I do like it, and it's never been crowded. And I also really like their on-site restaurant. Like everything else in Miami, it's expensive, but I think the food there is pretty good. Now another great option, and this is if you have Hilton points, which I also have had back in the day before I went all in on my Capital One Venture X card, is the Hilton Bentley Hotel South Beach. This gives you direct access to Ocean Drive. They have a rooftop pool. It's kind of a weird layout, but it's also close to the beach, and you have access to the Hilton Beach Club, which is very nice. You go, you get a lounger, you have an umbrella right there on site. You don't have to carry anything. It's a little more expensive, but it's definitely, I think, worth the money if you are determined to have an extra beach day. They even do offer food service at the beach, of course, at an extra cost. Now I want to share with you one of my favorite hacks if you're cruising out of Port Miami. If you are flying in and out for your cruise out of Miami and you have a return flight home that's later in the day and you got a whole day to kill, there's a lot of things you can do. You can rent a car. I don't like doing that. Again, Miami drivers, absolutely psychotic. Traffic is miserable and it's stressful. And after a cruise, I'm just tired. I'm ready to go home. I want to chill. I want reliable Wi-Fi. I want to catch up on work stuff. So what I love to do is to book a day room. Now, a day room is basically a hotel room, but you're not spending the night, you're spending the day. So instead of checking in at 4, checking out by 11, you check in 9, 10 a.m., but you have to be out of there by like 4 or 5. Now, what's great is you have access to the full room. You can take a nap, you can enjoy air conditioning, you can enjoy reliable Wi-Fi, you can take a shower or a bath if you want. And if the hotel has amenities like pools or beachfront access, you have access to all of that as well. And because they're day use, they're usually a lot cheaper than booking for a night. Now, my go-to in Miami, I've been here more times than I can count, is the Hyatt Centric Brickell. It's close to the port. You can actually see the ships off in the distance if you have a balcony on the port-facing side. And it has an amazing rooftop pool. They have everything. They have towels. They even have sunscreen that you can use. So if you're already packed and ready to go back home, just wear your swimsuit or keep it with you, and you have everything else right there. And their on-site restaurant is top notch. They have a Cuban sandwich that I think about all the time. Now, if you want to book a day pass here, again, very affordable. It's a nice hotel that you get used to of the day. It's also within walking distance of some nice coffee shops and things like that, but it does not have beach access, but it's a great option. I'll drop that link below along with all of my hotel recommendations as well. And remember, another great option if you want to sightsee, maybe you've never been to Miami, you want to get around and see some things, and I'll give you my top recommendations of Miami attractions here in a moment. You can always book my boy Hector because he does offer private Miami tours as well. He'll take care of your luggage, keep it in the car safely for you, take you around. For me, what I love to do, my kids love to do, we love to go to the mall. I mentioned Miami International Mall. We also love Dolphin Mall. They have a Pop Mart machine that my kids go crazy over. So I know it sounds stupid to go to the mall as a tourist, but that's what we like to do, so don't judge. Now, not everybody flies in. Some people drive. So if you are driving to your cruise out of Port Miami, let's talk about your parking options. On-site parking, it's easy, but it's not cheap. It's gonna cost you about $22 per day, and garages are located based on which terminal you're sailing from. If you're cruising out of terminals A through G or V, generally you're gonna park on the north side. And by the way, if this is too much to get in video format, I do have a written Port Miami guide that spells this all out for you. I'll drop that link below. If you're cruising out of terminals J or K, it's on the south side. Just look for the signage, it's pretty clear. Now, if you wanna save money, which is what I always like to do, there are off-site parking lots near the port. They do offer shuttle service, and they're gonna be a lot cheaper, 10 to 18 bucks a day, but not as convenient, obviously. But if you're cruising for a long cruise, a week or longer, that can add up to some serious savings. But of course, that trade-off is that extra time waiting for the whole shuttle process. Now, a quick tip if you are driving into Port Miami, pull up to the terminal first, drop off your luggage with a porter. It costs you nothing, although tips are generally expected. Then go park your car. Then you're not left schlepping your bags across the lot. Make sure too, if you're parking, snap a photo of your parking spot. So after a cruise, debarkation's crazy. People are tired, usually ready to go home, and they're depressed because the cruise is over. You don't want to spend an hour hunting for your car because you don't remember where you parked. Now, of course, like most home port destinations, traffic leaving the port is going to be the heaviest between 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. So you want to build in extra time if you're debarking in that time range. Now, really quickly, I want to talk about Port Miami itself. Port Miami, like I mentioned, is absolutely massive. It can handle up to 9 cruise ships at once, and given its popularity, many times it's at capacity. There are ATMs scattered without, there's Wi-Fi that's kind of hit or miss depending upon the terminals. As I mentioned, it's adjacent to downtown, and it's about a mile from Bayside Marketplace. Now, when it comes to embarkation, they've got it going on. Port Miami runs pretty smoothly. I sail out of there probably more than than any other cruise port, and I've never had an issue. Now, it is important though when it comes to embarkation that you follow your boarding window. Not all cruise lines make you pick a boarding window, but many of them do. If you show up before your boarding window, they may let you in sometimes, depending on their mood and the time of day, whatever, but sometimes they'll make you wait outside. And if you're too late and you miss it on the back end, you might get stuck in long lines. And that Miami traffic and cruise day chaos can be a recipe for stress. So don't cut it close, even though you might think, okay, my hotel is really close to Port Miami. It's like 3 miles. 3 miles in Miami miles is a lot of time sometimes. So you wanna make sure you bake in extra travel time because of these issues. And if you do follow my little hack and you end up flying into Fort Lauderdale to save money, you might think these two destinations are not too far apart, but that can take you 45 minutes to an hour to get from Fort Lauderdale to Miami. And you also have to factor in possible bridge openings too, which can be an issue in South Florida. Now, when it comes to the porters, when you get to the port and you're embarking and you're at the curb, again, there are porters here. They work for the Port Authority. They'll take your checked bags. It costs you nothing. And as I mentioned, tips are kind of the general norm. I tip anywhere from $2 to $5 per bag. And you want to make sure you have cash with you for that. And it's helpful if you have your cruise tags printed at home and attached before you leave. And don't just staple them. I've seen so many lost bags because people staple these paper tags and they just get ripped off. I use reusable plastic tags. I live by these things. They're super cheap. They're reusable. Mine have made it through many cruises. I'll drop my link below if you want to check those out. Definitely worth the investment. Now, if you do choose to check your bags, not everyone does, you can carry on. That's what my boyfriend chooses to do. He has trust issues. So he never wants to drop his bags. He carries them all with him. But if you do check your bags, I'm team check, make sure you do keep with you any medications, valuables, your passport, your cruise papers, and electronics, things like that in your carry-on, and take that with you because bags don't get lost very often, but it can happen. And if your bag does get lost, I've had that happen, it's usually somewhere on the ship. It's just delayed getting to you, but eventually it does get to you. It's pretty rare, but it can happen that a bag actually gets left behind or put on another ship, things like that. It's rare, but it can happen, so make sure you have your really important stuff with you. And always have your cruise documents and your passport with you as well. Once you're inside, you'll go through security, you'll go through the scanners, you'll show your ID, you'll go through the check-in process, and you're generally on board within 45 to 60 minutes in most cases. And if you need wheelchair assistance, it's important to request this in advance. And again, at the curb, ask the porter. All terminals are accessible, and if you use a travel agent, they can help you arrange this as well. Now let's talk about debarkation, the sad time when your cruise is over. Usually you'll start debarking in Port Miami around 7 a.m., assuming everything's okay with clearance from Customs and Border Protection. If you're doing self-assist, which is carrying off your own bags, you can get off pretty early. And for me, I like to get off as early as I can to beat that crazy rush and to get out of Dodge and get to the airport or to my day room or wherever it is that I'm going. And oddly enough, while I'm team check when it comes to embarkation, I am team self-assist when it comes to getting off the ship because again, I want off as soon as possible. I'm ready to go. If you are cruising with a passport, which is not always required, if it's a specific closed loop itinerary, yada, yada, you're gonna have smooth sailing because Customs now uses facial recognition for most US citizens who are sailing on the passport. You'll go to the terminal, facial recognition, approved, you're out. And if you are flying home, Miami International Airport is about 20 minutes away, assuming no issues, traffic wrecks. And if you're flying home out of Fort Lauderdale, FLL, that's gonna be more like a 45 to 60 minute drive. Now, when it comes to flying home, a lot of times cruisers have angst about what time should I book my flight. The general rule in cruising is around noon, so you wanna book your flight by noon. I'll be honest, I think 11 a.m. is totally fine flying out of Miami if you're coming off a cruise from Port Miami. I've actually done significantly earlier than that, but that's with status and self-carry and stuff like that. But if you want to avoid the stress, noon is a safe spot, but for Miami, usually 11 a.m. is fine, as long as you don't waste time getting off the ship. Now, Port Miami does not offer luggage storage, so if you debark and you want to sightsee in Miami, or if you have that late flight home, you're not gonna have any luggage storage options there, but there are places in Miami that will store your luggage for you. I recommend a service like Radical Storage. I'll drop the link below. They'll let you search locations that will stow your luggage. I've been in that situation before. I stowed my luggage. It actually ended up being stored at a UPS store, and we Ubered there, we stored our luggage. It was like $5 a bag or something. And then we actually walked to a local mall. I'm sensing a theme. I like to shop. I like malls, I guess. That's a great time killer. And we saw a movie. And then we just got our bags and Ubered to the airport. It was better than sitting around in an airport for 4 hours. And when it comes to attractions and things to do, let's talk about the top things to do in Miami, because this city is not just a cruise port, It's a pre-cruise playground if you give yourself the time. So here are a few ways to make your cruise out of Miami more memorable and using Miami as a destination, not just as an embarkation point. South Beach, it's iconic. You can walk Ocean Drive, snap some photos, get your toes in the sand. As I mentioned, if you want a beach day experience, you can book a beach day hotel, or you can also do a beach day resort pass. So if you fly in, you don't board the ship till later, you book that pass, you can spend some time at the beach, they'll store your luggage for you securely. Then when it comes time to embark the ship, you get your stuff, you go, you get on the ship. Little Havana is another great option. It's one of my favorites. It's very cultural. You get a lot of Cuban influence. You get a lot of great Cuban food. There are some really great cafes there with Cuban coffee, I think are really great as well. Wynwood Walls delivers that Insta magic, Instagram. There's huge murals, there's lots of photo spots, hip coffee shops, and art absolutely everywhere. And here's my favorite thing to do in Miami. It's kind of niche, but if you are a Dexter fan, you know the show about the serial killer, I kind of love it, and so does my daughter. We're weird like that. But you'll love the fact that you can actually see his apartment. So Dexter was set in Miami. People actually live here. It's a real like condo unit system, right? So it's gated and there's cameras and you can't get in and be respectful of the residents, but you can actually kind of drive up and see it and take photos. And interestingly, it's not quite what you might think. It looks very different than the show, but definitely a cute, fun, and quirky stop. And if you're into architecture and food, don't skip the Miami Design District. Now let's talk about food, because you can't have Miami without Cuban food. Versailles in Little Havana is the holy grail. In fact, I actually didn't know what it was. Twice I've been to the same coffee shop in Little Havana, killing time after or before a cruise, and I kept seeing like these long lines of people, and I'm like, what is going on over there? And now I know it's this spot. So it is a really great Cuban restaurant that again draws crowds and people lining up to get it. If you are short on time or like me and you have zero patience for lines and waiting, Havana 1957 in Brickell or the Las Olas Cafe in South Beach are also great choices. Now, if you want a quick stylish breakfast, this is my favorite spot. I go almost every time I cruise out of Port Miami, which is often, which is Sagrado Cafe. I love a good iced mocha. I'm a coffee girl, and they have amazing Brazilian coffee. It's a little expensive, but everything in Miami is, but it's a really fun vibe and really amazing coffee. Now, if you're celebrating something special and you like to be a typical tourist, a great option is Hell's Kitchen in Miami. It's upscale, it's surprisingly good. I was on a cruise with my daughter once. She loves Gordon Ramsay, so we had to go. It was very expensive, but I'm not kidding when I say it was one of the best meals I've ever had in my life, especially the mac and cheese. Big standout, but sadly they don't have the idiot sandwich on the menu. And if you're looking to just eat well, Joe's Stone Crab is legendary. And if you like Instagram access, Salt Bay, you know the guy that went famous with the viral memes of like the salt Turkish guy, the Nusret Steakhouse is a great option. They're expensive for dinner, but they actually have a pretty surprisingly affordable lunch option. And if you're doing a day room at the Hyatt Centric Brickell, Miami, it's actually right around the corner. You can walk there as well. So lots of great options for food, attraction, cruise itineraries. You're never gonna get bored if you're taking a cruise out of Port Miami.